There is no theme that's too bold for Girls Talk.
Hi, my name is Audrey Gelman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of The Wing, and I am so proud to be here with Adwoa Aboah, who is a supermodel and also an activist. I think as women, we are sent the message our entire lives that we should be seen and not heard, and certainly I think that models are sent that message, which is why I think it's so powerful that you've chosen to use your platform to amplify such important conversations. So you've made a name for yourself not only as a fashion icon, but also as an advocate for girls, working to eradicate the stigma attached to mental health. 1 in 5 young people struggle with mental health issues, and 1 in 3 for girls. How does that statistic square with your experience growing up? I'd love to hear more about what you went through as a younger girl.
Firstly, hi everyone. Thank you for having me here today, Tina. So in terms of mental health, it's like, my whole idea behind statistics is it's almost as if, are there more of us, or are we just talking about it more now? And the fact is, when I was at school and while I was growing up, I was brought up in this kind of English, tough upper lip sort of energy where it was just like, get on with it. Although I came from a very kind of loving family, there wasn't necessarily any space for talking about emotions. And, there was no space within our school system to talk about what was actually going on with us and what was going on with me at the time. And I just struggled. I remember the day where I completely withheld from any sort of emotional well-being and emotional kind of truth. I decided that I wasn't going to talk about it anymore because no one was listening. And all those small things, at the beginning it was like, not having a boyfriend, not losing my virginity, getting my period, hormones, bullying, being mixed race in a predominantly white school, all these things then bubbled up and amounted to manic depression and anxiety. But what I struggled with, and the reason I started Girls Talk, was because why is it that why do things have to get to such rock bottoms before we start talking about it?
What was the original, where did you get the idea to start Girls Talk as a platform, and what did you originally think it would be, and how has it changed?
I started Girls Talk, really it's a stolen kind of format. I stole it from the many meetings that I had to go to in order to kind of start my recovery from substance abuse. And it was a women's meeting that I went to after I was sectioned, where it was the first time that I was in a confidential space with a group of women, and I started sharing, and all these women were just nodding. They were just nodding, and I was like, oh, I'm not the only person in the world that's feeling like this.
And tell us a little bit more about what the setting is like. So you're gathering young girls, you're giving them the permission to talk about sort of what's going on under the hood. And how do you see it affecting them and affecting their self-confidence?
It's absolutely magical. I can't really believe that it started from me talking about my own story and has become this space where we kind of have panel discussions, we have workshops around mental health, female health, all sorts of things. And what's happened now is, although we have these panel discussions, girls are getting up and not necessarily asking questions, but just speaking their truth, telling us what's going on in their life. And sometimes these panel discussions will go on for 3 hours because girls just want to speak about what's going on in their life, want to tell us, and want everyone to hear. And, we started the platform online, but we really kind of get the most, Girls Talk really blossoms when we do our more like kind of offline events, our festivals, which we've done all over the world now.
That's amazing. So you mentioned your struggle with addiction. It's a scary thing to open up about and talk about. We were talking about this backstage. I'm almost 3 years sober myself.
Congratulations.
But it's not a topic that people, thank you.
Yeah.
It's not a topic that people feel comfortable opening up about. It's still very taboo, but I think it's so brave and so important for people to take the stigma away from it and to talk about it honestly. Can you talk about your journey just from going through it privately and then deciding that it would be part of your public story?
Yeah, so what happened, I think in terms of substance abuse, I think what started as a very kind of teenage experiential like kind of journey through drugs and alcohol then became this sort of masking and facade of how I was going to like cover up any emotions that I was going through and hide how I was actually feeling. I think my parents, when they sent me to treatment, initially thought that it was just drugs and alcohol. That was my issue. But really, when I went to treatment, they really kind of gave me the space to really start talking about the depression and the bipolar that I was going through. But after that, on October the 3rd, 2014, after getting out of treatment, I tried to take my own life. And I think it just kind of, it was like, obviously it was my rock bottom, and I had many rock bottoms before that, but it was really, I think for everyone around me, they suddenly realized that it wasn't necessarily just the substances, and it actually had been a long journey before that where I had stopped talking about what was going on in my life. And the thing is that, with these taboo subjects such as like mental health and substance abuse, although there were lots of people around me kind of in the rooms and kind of getting sober, it was still kind of thought as that you had to be kind of lying on the floor with a needle sticking out of your arm until you kind of, to call yourself an addict. And everyone, as soon as I got out of treatment, were just like, well, this is not forever, is it? This is just for a bit. And I kind of felt that pressure to be like, yeah, this is just for a bit. It's like, no, this is forever.
You mentioned your parents and also growing up as mixed race in a predominantly white environment. Your father is from Ghana, and I'd love to hear just more about how your identity impacted your sense of belonging, especially as a younger girl.
It's really beautiful now because I feel such a connection with Ghana, but I think before that, the thing is that I wasn't white enough and I wasn't black enough. And I think that was something only now that I've really come to terms with, because it was just really confusing. There were many times at school where, I'd be with some of my girlfriends and they'd be like putting on skin-colored tights. And I was like trying to put the skin-colored tights, unaware that I can't wear the same colored skin tights as you're wearing. And just all sorts of things, When girls started wearing foundations, I had no idea that I couldn't wear the same foundation as my friend Steph Jones. I thought it had to be, I thought it was the same thing. I spent a lot of my years at school, wanting to wake up and suddenly have like long, blonde, flowing hair. And which obviously didn't happen. And so it was difficult, but it's only I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't aware of some of the like underlying racist comments that were surrounding me at school. I was unaware that, I kind of brushed it off my shoulders because it was an awkward conversation. It was uncomfortable to, stand up for myself. But now, it's something that I celebrate. I celebrate being half Ghanaian and half English.
So I know you just did, yes. I know you actually just did, hosted your first ever Girls Talk event in Ghana, which is incredible. And I know we have, I think, some photos of it here. Can you tell me a little bit more about that experience?
Oh, it was beautiful. 2018, I was on CNN speaking about how I wanted to do Girls Talk in Ghana, and now kind of flipped to this year, and we're there in Ghana doing this amazing event. And we really worked, I don't necessarily, Girls Talk doesn't have a community in Ghana, so we really worked with the schools and universities to bring the girls to the event. But it was an absolutely magical experience, but one of the biggest learning lessons I had from it was I'm even more adamant that Girls Talk is needed all over the world, but what was beautiful was to know that although Girls Talk is needed all over the world, it doesn't necessarily mean I am. And culturally, there are things that, although I can get down to a human base level of emotion, culturally, there are things that I don't understand. I haven't been brought up in a strict African household. I am not in fear of being sexually assaulted. I wasn't in fear when I was at school or at university. And this is something that the girls are having to live through on a daily basis. And it was just so beautiful to watch and be like, it's about handing the torch over. I'm handing the torch over to these wonderful girls and those wonderful women in order for them to speak their truth. And it's not about me all the time. It's about these lovely ladies.
It's incredible. You mentioned some of the differences culturally and just the sort of lived realities that are different in a place like Ghana to London or New York City, let's say. Did you find that there were also issues that the girls had in common that feel like they're universal?
Yeah, and I remember starting Girls Talk, and so many people were like, but you haven't trained as a psychotherapist at university, you don't know anything about this, are you sure you can start this? And, you came from a privileged kind of posh boarding school, how are you going to be able to talk to these girls about all sorts of things? And I was like, if you start making it that black and white, we've lost the battle already. And the beauty was, when I first moved to after treatment and after kind of realizing that I had to leave London to kind of continue my recovery, I moved to LA and I started working at schools on Skid Row. I started going to speak at girls' schools and posh boarding schools in London, and it was all universal. What was going on, what these girls wanted to speak about, it was all the same things. The circumstances might be different, but what they wanted to speak about was the same thing, and that was the same kind of situation that we had in Ghana. It was like, girls were, putting their hand up and talking about mental health, talking about sexual assault, talking about all sorts of things that I also hear when I'm doing talks in London or New York. Absolutely.
I think that this whole conference is about strength, and I know that we've had almost a couple leap years as women in the last few years, but we're all going through stuff under the hood. Every single person in this audience is. What would you say to the people who are here and watching? How can we best support the young girls in our life and advocate for their mental health?
Well, firstly, I'm just going to read you my mission statement so you kind of get a full grips of what Girls Talk is doing. So, Girls Talk is a movement that creates safe spaces, both on and offline, for people around the world to share, listen, and support each other without judgment or shame. Girls Talk welcomes everyone. However we may define ourselves and our communities, there are no outsiders here. At Girls Talk, no subject is off limits. We talk about our experiences of mental health, body image, sexuality, self-care, and so much more. Girls Talk empowers us to be honest, to question the world around us, to take action, and to strive for diverse, inclusive representation, equality, and positive change. By sharing our experiences and creating safe spaces, our community breaks down boundaries and lifts each other up. we challenge stereotypes, we fight inequality, and together we change the world around us. So, thank you. So, with that in mind, follow Girls Talk, tell your daughters and your sons about what we're doing here. The beauty of me sharing my story is Girls Talk has become a platform for every girl and boy, if they're willing, to share what's going on in their life. And what that does is it creates beautiful conversation. And it creates a feeling of not being the only person in the world going through something. So, what I needed something like Girls Talk when I was at school. I needed that confidential space, that space without judgment, a space where nothing was too taboo. And I needed someone to say that although I was privileged, that my problems were big enough to be talked about. And I needed someone to tell me that it was going to be difficult, that being a teenager was going to be difficult, but that there was going to be, and there is, light at the end of the tunnel. So that's, what I always tell my girls.
Thank you. Well, I applaud all the incredible work you're doing, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.